This podcast may contain graphic and/or explicit content that may not be suitable for some listeners, especially kids like me. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to the Real Life Podcast, brought to you by the Thin Blue Line for Women. In this podcast, we open up and talk about real life issues as they relate to first responders. It's raw, it's real, and it's about time. I'm Tamara, your host. Thanks for joining me. Are you looking for Thin Blue Line gear? It's available on our website at thinbluelineforwomen.com. That's thinblueline4women.com. Show your support for law enforcement and get your Thin Blue Line gear today. Just click on shop at thinbluelineforwomen.com. Don't forget, you can listen to the Real Life Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, and on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Do you like pink? I sure hope so, because in this next episode, you'll meet Sarah Cooksey, an engineer, EMT, and firefighter with the Tallahassee Fire Department. In this interview, she's going to talk about her passion, which is driving a pink fire truck around town. Thank you all for joining in. Sarah, it is so nice to meet you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Tamara.
Of course. So before we get into this long interview of questions that I have for you, let's just talk about you. Tell me and the listeners about Sarah.
Well, basically, I started public service at the age of 14 years old. I was a fire explorer with the Green Cove Springs Volunteer Fire Department. My dad was a volunteer there, and it was just something, we hopped on the back of the ambulances or the fire trucks and served the people in our community. It was a small community, and the volunteer department was pretty much the bulk of how we took care of our community. We had a few paid people at the time that were like Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And then eventually they went to 24 hours and they had fire and rescue there through Clay County Fire Rescue. But that was kind of how I got introduced. And, at 14, I was like, okay, this is kind of a cool gig. I was in ROTC in high school, and, a long line of military family. My dad was retired Air Force. My grandfather's a retired, Marine. I have an aunt and uncle that are near and dear to me that worked law enforcement. I have another uncle that's a paramedic up in Rhode Island. I have a lot of family that's what we do as public service. So, I was 17 my senior year when I graduated, and I kind of was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I went to EMT school, and I started working for Baptist St. Vincent's Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida. I worked there for about 5 years. And then I worked for another ambulance company. And then in 2002, I was hired with the Tallahassee Fire Department. So that's kind of basically where I started my family life and my career, so to speak, my retirement career at 22. And, by the time I was 25, I was married. The American dream, you have 2 kids, white picket fence, you build a house. I started a business on the side, manufacturing immobility accessories that I still currently run and operate. A lot of importing and challenges that we see in today's current economic times. But I was married for 15 years. In 2018, I got a divorce. I have 2 beautiful children. I have a son who's 16 and I have a daughter who's 14. And it's been a challenging, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years post-divorce, but I have a lot of things going for me. I have a lot of passion, and I love serving my community. I work for the Tallahassee Fire Department in 2 different capacities. I serve as a engineer, which drives the big red trucks, and I'm an acting lieutenant on the lieutenant's list. And I also do public information and social media. So I manage the social media for our department. And it kind of gives me a wide variety of things to work with and be responsible for, and I really enjoy it.
Wow. So being an engineer and an EMT and a firefighter and you're an acting lieutenant and you're, what did you say, the spokesperson for your department as well?
I do some public information, kind of the spokesperson, and then I also do the social media and manage the social media. So all of our
Wow.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and things like that.
So you are a very busy woman
Very busy.
at work and at home. And so you just told me that I didn't know this until just now that you recently got divorced in 2018. So divorce rates among first responders are high. You know that.
Oh yeah.
So what is it like working as a firefighter and an EMT and being divorced? I know that's a loaded question, but I mean,
Well, actually,
how do
I'm.
you manage that?
I mean, to get a little bit in my personal business and kind of in the weeds, but not too much. For me, it was kind of challenging because my ex-husband was also a firefighter with the same department. So, that just brings a whole different set of challenges. And the divorce rates are extremely high. And let's talk about why that is. I mean, there's PTSD in the fire service. There's so many stressors that, you try to keep them from coming home. And I feel like when you have two people involved in the same type of job, you come home and it's very stressful and it adds a whole different set of challenges. So once I got through the divorce, I was fortunate enough to, get into another relationship with somebody that really supported all my passions and everything I did. And actually, I think kind of brought me down to more of a normal level when it came to parenting and a lot of other things, because everything that we think is like a big deal sometimes, and then I think that this is a big challenge that everyone has. So in my life, I run into burning buildings and I go to someone's emergency, and this is fire service, law enforcement, EMS, any one of us.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
we mitigate problems, and I think that we really struggle with mitigating our own problems. And so a
mhm.
common phrase that I hear is, well, why are you crying? Why are you upset? Because you run into a burning building and you're in charge of people, you're in command of people, but you're upset about spilled milk. And I think it's because when we're in that command presence mode, or we're in that mode where we're working, it's someone else's problem. And a lot of times we can't deal with our own problems at home. So we go in and we try to help people and we try to do our best job at work, but then we come home and it's like, whoa, this is big and I really can't solve the problem right now. And we think that we
Right.
should have to be able to immediately solve
Mhm,
that problem,
mhm. Well,
but we
because at
can't
work
because
we
it's
do.
personal.
Right. It's emotional.
It's emotional and it's personal. I think that you can
Mhm,
detach when you're at work and you go in
mhm.
and you
Oh,
help
yeah.
someone else. You walk in and someone throws their baby, their lifeless baby in your arms, and you just go into work mode.
Right, right.
But if someone threw your lifeless baby into your arms, you panic.
It
And so that's how I try to use that
that's
analogy
true.
of it's your life
Yes,
versus someone else's life,
yes.
and you feel kind of out of control.
Right, right. That's interesting that you say that. I remember one time my alarm went off in my house. This is after I retired. My alarm went off in my house in the middle of the night. And okay, if I was at work, I would go charging in that house thinking somebody was in there armed, and I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. And here I
Right.
am retired and I'm in my own home and my alarm went off. I freaked out. I called 911 and I hid in my closet. I had my gun with me, but I hid. I hid in my closet with my daughter. And after the fact, I'm thinking, what am I doing? I'm a police officer. But it was emotional. It was my daughter I was protecting. I can't go in my own home and put my life on the line when I'm her only parent. So
Right.
so it's a totally different world when you're at work. If I'm at work, even though I'm a single parent and I could still lose my life, I'm going to charge in that house and arrest whoever's in there. Isn't that weird? It's such a different
My
different
aunt,
world.
who's retired law enforcement, we just talked about it. It's like that whole you go into work mode and then you come home and it's that disconnect. Like for me,
Yeah.
I finally moved out of the city a little bit, kind of in the country, and I have like a 25-minute drive home through just a beautiful countryside.
Mhm.
And I'm finally at a point in my life where I can kind of disconnect and listen to music, and I don't really talk to anybody on the way home. It's kind of my
Mhm.
moment for me, God, and the trees,
Right.
and music, and just kind of
Yes.
relaxing on the way home to be able to leave all that stuff at the door, because
Oh, yeah.
it really does affect who you are, and it affects, like you said, it's personal at home. And
Mhm.
so then the little things, like you could go in, and I'm sure as law enforcement, you will back this up. So you go into a domestic issue and there's a teenage girl not listening to her mom and they're arguing, and you're like, okay, I can help talk them down off this ledge. But then when you and your own daughter are arguing,
I know.
you're like, I can't deal with this.
Isn't that odd? It's because it's emotional. You're invested.
Right.
It's such a different thing. So you're when you got a divorce, your kids were 14 and 16? Is that what you said?
They're 14 and 16 now. So
Now,
they
okay.
were,
S-
12 and 14-ish when
So
the process started.
do you think it was easier getting a divorce with older children, or is it just as hard as if they were little tiny
You
kids?
know, I don't really have an answer for that, to be honest. I think that in some ways they're more understanding, but I think that divorce is bitter and raw. And I think that when they're smaller, they're not as aware of everything that's going on. I mean, in my case,
Mhm.
my kids kind of knew it was coming. They knew that we just weren't happy. And there was just a lot of insecurities there and things like that. And so they could see all of that. And so I guess what
Mhm.
I'm trying to say is that if they were, 2 and 4, that maybe we could have gotten past a lot of that stuff before they realized what was really going on, like started the healing process. So I'm trying to heal myself, make sure that my kids are healing, which has been a little bit difficult. I have my daughter pretty much full time and my son stays with
Mhm.
his dad. So that's been a little bit difficult. Actually, it's been very
Mhm.
difficult. There's no little bit about it. That's been very, very difficult. But
Yeah, I bet.
um, I think that if they were younger, it might have had some benefits. But then at the same time, I think being older, you're kind of on the other side of it too. So they're almost to being adults. So I don't really have the answer there because I haven't gone through the process with young kids. I know that with
Yeah.
teenagers, it's been pretty challenging.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a little bit ago also that he's a firefighter as well. So it was really difficult coming home, and you're a firefighter, he's a firefighter. You both have, these stressors that you both bring home with you, which maybe contributed to the divorce. But I'm going to ask you a serious question here. A lot of people think it's easier to be married to, a firefighter married to a firefighter, a first responder married to a first responder, because they understand each other more. And so, do you think that that's true?
I can honestly say because I'm right now sitting on both sides of the fence of that. So I was married to a firefighter, and now I'm in a pretty serious relationship of about a year and a half with someone who's not in first response at all. And I think that in some ways, yeah, it's nice to be able to just say, you know what, and let's just get raw here. Today, I put someone's child in a body bag, or I worked CPR for 30 minutes, and I couldn't bring this guy's wife back, and she's our age. Those types of things.
Mm,
Um, and those aren't as easily received in a relationship that someone is not a first responder,
mhm,
but it keeps me more grounded because Jason has the ability to listen to what I have to say, but at the same time, kind of just distract me in other ways. So we have a lot of outlets and hobbies and things that we do together, and he keeps me grounded, even though he's not a first responder. So I guess what I'm saying is it's easier if you're with a first responder to come home and like regurgitate everything you saw, but there's
right.
different levels of PTSD. So maybe you don't need to regurgitate everything that you see when you come home. Maybe you just need to say, I've had a rough day. And that's
Mhm,
really all you need to talk about instead of going into all those nitty gritty details. And I can say that now. I'm like, I've
mhm.
had a rough day. When we first got together, I would start to go into some details. He's like, I don't want to hear that. And that's okay because he
Oh,
doesn't really need
right.
to hear every little nitty gritty
The
detail.
details.
He just needs to know
Yeah.
that I've had a rough day. And
Uh-huh.
I think that this relationship for me is stronger because of that. And he really does he keeps me grounded. He's a fantastic parent. I mean, there are days that I'm humbled because my daughter will have me ripping my hair out, and he's like, "Does that really matter?" And I'm like, "You know what? In the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. You're right. It's
Like pick,
petty."
like pick your battles, right?
Right.
That's interesting. So okay. Now here's a weird question for you. If you wouldn't have got divorced, are the struggles still the same with two first responders living together, having a life together?
What do you mean?
I
Like,
mean, with your struggles are probably worse because you're divorced. But what about two people who aren't divorced?
like if
I
they're
mean, are the
still in a
struggles still the
marriage.
same? Yeah, are the struggles still the same? First
Yes,
responder to
and
first responder.
yes, and oddly enough, so um, I actually wrote a portion of a book with a friend of mine, and it, that book was basically dealing with first responder marriages. And so a lot of it we approached as a first responder and then a significant other or a husband or wife or actually it was husbands mostly, but that weren't first responders. But there were some that were both first responders. And I think that those problems, I mean, there's a lot of issues there, and it's just how you approach it. I mean, I know of another married couple that I work with, actually a couple, and um, they all face struggles, but I think they get through them. And I think it's just a matter, some couples can make it and some can't,
Mhm.
but I think that's marriage in general. Some people can
Yeah.
work it out and some people can't. I do think that getting help before it gets extremely bad or getting counseling is a must, but both people have to want to do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other struggles too when we get down into the weeds of all that too, where, let's face it, a lot of first responders battle addiction, whether it's
Mhm.
alcohol or drugs or, and the differences is that they know how to hide it better. So they'll get a prescription
Oh
or
yeah.
they'll deal with those kind of drugs instead of, going on the street and getting those. There's a lot of things that we use to compartmentalize and cover up what we're dealing with. It's the kick the dog syndrome, So I think getting a divorce, I had struggles, but I think that being married, there's the same amount of struggles. It's just the amount of work you want to put into it, I guess.
Right. Right. Let me take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to actually talk about your pink fire truck.
Okay, awesome.
I'm excited to talk about that. We'll be right back.
Me too.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. And there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm.
Are you interested in CSI or forensics? The Forensic Science Academy program has been recognized as the premier training program completely dedicated to students who are launching their forensic career. The Academy offers specialized hands-on training modules in basic and advanced crime scene investigation, forensic photography, fingerprint identification and classification, crime scene management, and coroner investigations. Instruction is offered in the form of weekend workshops, online courses, webinars, and seminars. Training at the Academy of Forensic Science will give students the competitive edge employers and agencies are looking for when hiring. Past graduates are now working as crime scene investigators, private investigators, forensic pathologists, coroner investigators, forensic nurses, forensic accountants, and even criminalists. The courses are taught by forensic professionals who are experts in the field and hold membership in the International Association for Identification and other professional forensic organizations. For more information, visit forensicscienceacademy.org. Again, that's forensicscienceacademy.org. Have you ever wondered what being a part of CSI is really like? If so, here's your chance to experience it. My book, titled Through My Eyes, CSI Memoirs That Haunt the Soul, contains 11 personal accounts of the most grueling and heartbreaking crime scenes I worked during my 15 years in the Crime Scene Investigations Unit. While reading my book, you'll walk inside the crime scene tape with me. You'll catch a glimpse of what I saw, touched, smelled, and even tasted during an average workday. I'll take you on a difficult journey of memories, uncovering layers of emotional trauma left behind. So if you're considering a job in CSI, this is the book for you. Or if you're just wondering what it's like to work in CSI, again, this is the book for you. Through My Eyes is available in the ebook format and paperback on Amazon. All right, we're back from break, and let's talk about your pink fire truck. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's my favorite thing to talk about.
Yay. Well, so where did this idea of the pink fire truck come from? So go ahead.
Well, there's a man named Dave Graybill out of Phoenix, Arizona, and he started the National Pink Heels Tour. So in 2010, it was October of 2010, the national tour came through Tallahassee. And when they came through Tallahassee, I was like, wow, this is a really cool program. And he kind of pitched the program, and he gives the program gives the program for free to all communities that they really kind of want it. And back then the prerequisite was that a firefighter ran it, and, because it was pink fire trucks. And his hope was that you would adopt this program in your community, and that all the money raised would go towards things like taking care of families with cancer. And it initially started with cancer, but then since then we've kind of branched off to taking care of any kind of need, like a medical need. And if someone steps forward and they're like, hey, I need some help with certain things, we step up and we take care of those needs. So that was October of 2010. And like I mentioned earlier, I own a manufacturing company where I manufacture immobility goods, hunting accessories, and things like that. And in front of my business, there is another business named Universal Collision, and it's a paint and body shop. And the guy that owns that paint and body shop, his name is Frank Gandy, and he had a daughter named Ariel. And at the time, Ariel was about 15 years old, and he thought that she needed a part-time job. And he said, hey, do you have something that Ariel can do? Because I feel like kids should work for someone else and not for their parents, because it teaches them responsibility and they're not working under their parents. So it kind of gives them a little dose of reality. And so I said, sure, no problem. I'm going to have her come in and answer phones and all this. So that was like, let's see, the middle of 2009 or 2010 rather, beginning to middle. And so she would come in the afternoons and she would answer phones and file papers and do like little clerical stuff in my warehouse. And I remember her not feeling good in the afternoon. So fast forward to October, and that's when Pink Heels came through. And the very next day, we found out that she was diagnosed with liver cancer. And she battled that liver cancer. They gave her like 6 months to live. And I'm kind of giving the condensed version, but like they flew in special radiation beads and stuff like that from Australia and like did all this, heavy duty treatment for her. And her 6 months turned into about a year and a half or so. And I was like, our community needs this program. Well, in the meantime, 2011 kind of went around. I incorporated and started a 501c3. And I'm like, okay, now where am I going to get a fire truck? And, 2012 rolled around and she passed away. And in September of 2012, I actually rode on the national tour. I drove from Seattle, Washington to San Francisco.
Wow.
And so I drove Pink Heels. Yep. I drove Pink Heels trucks on the national tour all that way. I mean, it was crazy because we drove Pink Heels trucks through the redwood forest. I mean, it was just kind of an amazing experience. And what I learned on the tour in 2012 was what it was like to be a tour driver. Like I understood the concept of Pink Heels and I understood, what we were about, but being a tour driver and driving from city to city and just seeing that cancer is one of those things that affects everyone and seeing that families all have the same kind of needs. So one family might have insurance and they just need help with groceries and rent and those types of things because their copays are expensive, or just the travel alone for treatments. Whereas another family may not have insurance and, you step in and pay for their biopsy, their initial treatment, getting them started. And then another family, their loved one lost their battle and they don't know what funeral expenses are going to look like or how to do those types of things. So anyway, in 2012, I drove on the national tour. And then in 2013, I was actually given a pink fire truck, and that was my very first truck. And that was the truck that I named Ariel, and I named it after Ariel Gandy, which was Frank's daughter. So that big pink truck, that big pink truck's named Ariel. And I could tell you a whole lot of stories about my journey with her. But so fast forward, it took 3 years. for us to restore and paint that truck. It was, gosh, I want to say like 2,600 manpower hours of volunteers that came in to restore and repaint her. And then in 2016, April 30th of 2016, we dedicated her to our community after that restoration process. And it was an amazing experience just to get her on the road. And then I realized, wow, we did this for our own community. And then the weekend that we dedicated her, we actually paid for someone to have a biopsy because they didn't have health insurance and they were so scared. And I remember how terrified they felt, and they just needed that treatment, but couldn't afford it. It was like $1,500. And so some of the things that we did too, is we went into the doctor's offices and the labs and all that kind of stuff, and we would negotiate pricing. Like, if we do a cash pay, what will you do for my patient, our client? And a lot of times they would come in and kind of work with us. So it was just I realized at that point that it was a community thing and that everybody wanted a part of it. And so Pink Heals Tallahassee chapter isn't mine. It really belongs to the community, and it's been an amazing journey. So I had Ariel, and then we fast forward a little bit more, and one day someone else said, "Hey, I've got this other truck," and I am bad with dates, but they're like, "I have this other truck." And around that time, there was a little boy named Miles Shanahan, and he was not quite 4 years old, and he actually lost his battle to neuroblastoma.
Oh gosh.
And around the time that he lost his battle, originally we were supposed to do a home visit, and I was going to let Miles drive the truck around the neighborhood, let Miles drive Ariel around the neighborhood. And he just never was well enough for that. So we didn't end up doing that. And then I followed his family on social media, and then he ended up passing away. And one of the needs that they had is, and each family has different needs or different wants or different desires. And it was just really important for his mom and to have closure to have an obituary. So I actually contacted the Tallahassee Democrat, and I was like, "Hey, I'm Sarah Cooksey with Pink Hills Tallahassee chapter, and we have this little guy that just lost his battle to neuroblastoma, and it's really important for his family to have an obituary. And she'd like it run on a Sunday. Is there anything that you can do to kind of help me out here?" And the Democrat was very willing to kind of reduce the price of the obituary. And they ran it in the paper. And literally that night, I got a phone call from one of my friends, Maurice, that has said, "Hey, Sarah, are you interested in another truck for your pink fleet?" And I was like, "Man, I need another truck. Like, I need a hole in the head." Well, I decided to take that truck, and I decided to gamble that his parents might want a truck named after him. And I reached out to them. And I said, hey, this is what I've got going on. And I went and I picked up the truck that is now named Miles. Well, when I sent pictures of the fire truck to his family, they then sent me a picture of him running, and I'll email these pictures to you because they're incredible. But they then sent me pictures of him running in front of an identical truck to the truck that I was just given when he was still alive.
Whoa.
Parked them side by side. They're like the same year, make, model. And he was just running and playing carefree in a field in front of this truck that I ended up getting the exact same pretty much make and model, and we named it after him. When I picked up the truck, it was meant to be. When I picked up the truck, it said "In God We Trust" on the front, on the hood. Along this Pink Heals journey for me, there's always been signs and symbols. That was a big sign for me. With Ariel, it was dragonflies. I've had dragonflies literally land in my hand. As a matter of fact, this morning when Jason and I were leaving to do something, just before he had to go to work early, so we got up super early and handled some things this morning, I looked at the rear view mirror of the truck that we were in, and a dragonfly landed on the mirror. And what we were actually en route to do was to buy batteries for Miles.
Wow, that's amazing. I believe in those things.
Oh, I totally do too. I think that, for me, when they show up, it's like, okay, Ariel's there with me, and she's always validating whatever I'm going through at the moment.
Right. That's awesome. So do you drive this only on special occasions? You don't drive this every day.
No, it's not an everyday. It's not an everyday driver. So with Ariel right now, she's out of commission. In January of 2020, somebody set her on fire, and it was actually an arson case that was under investigation by the state, and they came in and investigated it. And, that was kind of gut wrenching for me. So, I I go through a divorce. I face some family challenges, face some work challenges. And then my passion, like the thing that was my
Right.
heart aside from my family, someone set that on fire. And so,
Was it parked at a fire station?
no, it was actually parked in front of Universal Collision, which is Frank Ariels' dad's
Oh,
business.
oh my
So it
gosh.
was just very, very gut wrenching. But it was funny
Yeah.
because there were we got a lot of media attention and things like that afterwards. And there's a company in town called American Truck Depot, and she's actually at their business right now, and they're working on her and working on getting her
Aw,
restored. Getting some tires for the
good.
front, working on her motor. Then we're kind of gonna repaint her and get her back on the road. But what I learned through that was, once again, the resilience of our community, and it kind of did some things. It reminded me of where I needed to be and kind of like kicked me in the butt, because you
Mhm.
get to those points in life where you kind of lay down, but it kind of like
Yeah.
jump started me again. It made me angry enough to be like, nobody's going to take that away from me or the community or Ariel's family, Miles's family,
Right.
nothing like that. So it
Absolutely.
kind of um, jump started me getting back to where I needed to be. And then I was like, well, how am I going to fix this? And then a guy named David Teams with the Leon County Sheriff's Department stepped up and he's like, let's make challenge coins and let's do this. And, had a company, Anchor Construction, come in and do some donations. And then I saw once again that the community really stepped up and they believe in what we do and they wanted to be a part of restoring her. And so it just kind of gave me a little more faith. And then slowly things would evolve. And, through that entire process of my divorce and Ariel being set on fire, actually made friends with a lady who survived her battle. And I call her like my Tallahassee mom, and she just supports everything that we do. And she's really amazing. Her name is Deborah
Aw.
Fulbright, but she's very supportive. And so with every little hurdle that we faced, we've just had so much support. And I'm looking forward to having her back on the road. And then this morning I was like, I have a little girl named Charlie that we're going to go visit over in Crestview. And, she's battling cancer at such a young age. And so we're going to do like a gift basket and bring that over to her. And so I was like, well, I don't want to go without a truck. So I need to make sure that Miles has what he needs. So we needed new
Yeah,
batteries. And I don't know. I just kind of got that kick in the pants to get back where I need to be.
good. That's great. So you're the only one that drives this, right? Are any
Um, I,
other
I
people allowed to
actually
drive your truck?
I know. So this is horrible to say, but yes, when I first started it was like, that's my baby. And so to let someone drive it was just kind of, it was gut wrenching. But
Yeah.
I do have a board of directors, um, and they all drive. And then there's, oddly enough, Ariel is a 1972 Pierce snorkel, and she was a Tallahassee Fire Department unit way back in the day. And so a lot of the people that I work with are like, man, I remember riding that thing when I first got hired. Now they're retiring, but
Wow.
one of my lieutenants, he's like, I drove that thing when we got it, and or not when they got it, but like after they got it. And it's just
Yeah.
neat hearing those stories about this truck. And then they got to watch it go from, our city to Wakulla County and then back to our city again, working as a pink fire truck. So anyway, when I first started, I was like, nobody's driving this truck. And I have a handful of people that I let drive it. But oddly enough, Miles is driven strictly right now by Jason. And that's, the love of my life that's in my life right now and supports everything that I do, because it's a standard and I don't really drive a
Yeah.
standard well. So it's not just a standard that I can drive a standard car, but it's a big truck. And I'm just, I don't know, kind of nervous about it, which is funny because I drive big trucks for a living. But so he started driving it for me and was going to show me the ins and outs of it. And I'm like, you know what, you're doing just fine. So usually I'll have him drive Miles to events for me and I just kind of get chauffeured around, or it's a really easy way for me to bring both trucks to an event. And, we've done
Mhm.
that too. So
Yeah.
I've gotten laid back about it now where I'll let other people drive her.
Yeah. So I saw a video recently of people signing the truck. Who gets that opportunity to sign?
So we like to consider our trucks, the pink represents women, because when Dave founded this organization, he was like, women are the primary caregivers. We were talking about that earlier. Like you're saying, I was a
Mhm.
single mom, but I was a law enforcement officer, but I raised my daughter, and you're still that primary caregiver. So, we're expected to do this job and fill this role, but we're also expected to be that caregiver at home. So the reason the truck is pink, because a lot of people think it's for breast cancer, is because it represents the woman, it represents the mom and the person who takes care of her family. So anyone who's been affected by any type of cancer or terminal illness, man, woman, or child, can sign in honor or memory of a loved one. So it could be your husband, it could be your son, your daughter, your wife, whatever. And you just write a love note on the side of it. We like to call it like
Aww.
the rolling Vietnam memorial, so to speak, for families. So
Yeah.
people will come back and look for their signatures, and they do fade over time with rain and everything else. So we kind of say that it like fades into the soul of the truck. And if someone shows up and they're like, I can't find my signature, then I just encourage them to sign it again.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm basically driving around people's loved ones is what all that signature.
Yeah. No, I did
represents.
not know that the pink represented a woman.
Yep, that's what it represents.
I thought it was breast cancer.
No.
So I'm glad you clarified that. That's good. Wow. So I want to talk a little tiny bit. I don't want to get too much into it, but when I tried to have this podcast episode with you about a month ago, well, when the riots were just jumping off, you said, ma'am, you called me ma'am, I can't do it. We're really busy right now. And then you sent me a picture and you were wearing like a Kevlar helmet and some gear. And I thought to myself, wait a second, she's not a first responder. I mean, she's not a law enforcement officer. She's a firefighter. Why is she wearing this like riot gear? So can you talk about that just briefly?
Sure. And at the time that you reached out to me, we were busy with so much. I mean, just with COVID-19 and, and then the protests and things like that. So I work for a city, and I'm very fortunate that we have excellent gear provided to us. So we're provided with protective gear. We're provided with a bulletproof vest, Kevlar vest and a helmet in case we go into a situation that's just not safe for us. We always wait for law enforcement to come and secure the scene. But the reality is sometimes they may not be there right away, or we get into a situation that we thought was safe that isn't safe. So we've been provided equipment to use in those situations. Just like we have special N100 masks that we wear on all medical calls now. We have a lot of policies in place to just kind of keep us safe. But yeah, I never really thought as a firefighter that I would go, oh, I need to wear a bulletproof vest and a helmet.
I know, exactly.
Because we run into burning buildings. But I mean, it's just getting to the point that, I mean, I like to say the world is kind of crazy right now, just all the way around. I mean, 2020 has been just such a strange world. Our kids are homeschooled, we deal with this virus that we know enough about, but we don't know enough about. And there's always something evolving from that. And, just everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys have that gear. It was just interesting to me that you had it. And so I wanted to make sure we talked about that briefly, but about your pink fire truck, how long do you think that this, well, you're actually the National Pink Heels tour. I mean, this is going to go on forever, right? You're constantly going to be involved in this, right?
Well, the way it works is the National Pink Heels Tour, they go on tour every year and they go from city to city to share the program, but then the cities adopt the program. So I'm my own chapter of Pink Heels Tallahassee chapter, which is a 501c3 in itself, but we just kind of umbrellaed underneath the national tour. That's where we kind of got our start from, so to speak.
Okay.
So I guess an easy comparison is we're kind of like a franchise.
Right. Exactly. So you plan your own events, you do your own thing.
Correct.
So when are you planning on retiring, and how are you going to hand over that pink truck to someone else? Are you going to be able to do that?
Yeah. And see, the thing is that the pink truck really isn't associated with the fire department. So even when I retire from TFD, I can still continue to do Pink Heels.
Okay.
And actually what's really cool is I have a good friend named Rochelle who works for the police department. And so we're talking about just growing and getting a pink patrol car for our chapter. There's chapters in Rhode Island that have pink ambulances, pink patrol cars, pink fire trucks, and their chapter just got bigger and bigger. So that's one of the things on the horizon for us is a pink patrol car.
Love it.
And but the retirement question, so technically I retire in 7 years. I'll be 47. And then it's just going to be a matter on if I choose to do the drop or not. And that'd be a 5-year drop. So I'd still be 52 when I was fully retired.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I'd necessarily give up Pink Heels at that time or even my business. I mean, that's kind of young,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I was just wondering how you were going to handle that. But since you don't have to give it up, that's a good thing. You can keep it.
And you know what?
It is your
always,
passion.
always just say you cross that bridge when you get there.
Right.
So,
well, Sarah, this has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for clarifying things about the National Pink Heels Tour. And it's just awesome to talk to you and to see what you're doing in your community.
I'm really thankful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. If you're enjoying the Real Life podcast, I invite you to consider supporting it monetarily. Just 99 cents a month will go a long way to secure future episodes. Where exactly does your money go? It pays the monthly fees for the program I use to record the guests. I want to recognize and thank the following listeners for supporting the Real Life podcast: Lori, Ben, Susan, Katie, Ron, Cammie, Paul, and Anne. So thank you for listening, and I hope you decide to support the Real Life podcast. Just click on the podcast link that I post on Facebook and Twitter, then click the link that says support. And it also has a $sign next to it. You're all amazing. I'll see you next week.